I am Megan and welcome to Battle Royale with Cheese, the website you can get all of your TV and film news, reviews and trailers. And I have got round to watching the season finale of AlienEarth. We got to the end! So, if you remember when I did the last episode, I said that actually I was pretty stumped with how the series was going to end. There was a lot of loose ends that were tied up in the last episode, if you remember, and I was a bit confused on what's going to happen in this episode. Turns out a lot. So I do have notes on my phone, so apologies if I do occasionally look down. I do have notes on my phone to look at, and I will definitely be needing them because actually a lot did happen in this episode that needed to happen. And also considering that season 2 has been confirmed to happen, I think it ends on a really interesting note. So essentially, I don't know if there was a bit of a time skip between the last episode and this one, because by this time, Curly, Nibs, essentially the last synthetics who are left are put in a holding cell. Prodigy, the facility has been cut off from everything else. They're completely isolated, satellites have gone down, they've been shut down by Wayland. Wayland are on their way to the facility, and yeah, everything's basically gone wrong. The xenomorph, Wendy's xenomorph, is still running around the forest without orders, which is what we found out in the last episode. And there's been an evacuation of majority of the staff at Prodigy. So everything has basically gone wrong. Boy is absolutely losing his mind because of this. Everything has not gone in his favour, and even the synthetics. This has already been hinted at throughout the series, but they've gone against him as well, as they realise that actually they're not as free as they thought they were. Boy is still communicating with this sheep. There's an eyeball creature that at the beginning, pretty much at the beginning of the show actually, connected with a sheep and took control of it. Now, I haven't really mentioned it, to be honest, throughout my video reviews because I didn't really think it was going to be that important. They kept coming back to it, but I didn't really get why. And Boy is still communicating with this thing. In the last episode, he basically realised that this creature could be as smart as him. We talked about before in a previous episode where he is striving to find someone who he can have an intelligent conversation with, who is smarter than him. And he finds it in this creature. And in the last episode, he actually wondered aloud, like, you're so intelligent, what if you were in a human? Like, wow, that could unlock so much potential. And he says, as a precaution, we're going to put you into a weaker-minded human just in case. And the implication was that that was going to be Hermit. And for a while I thought this actually was going to happen. He gets trapped in with this creature, but Wendy comes in and tries to kill the creature, the little eyeball creature. It escapes out of the sheep and goes out of the facility essentially. And do you remember Arthur, who was left dead at the beach? Yeah, guess what? So the eyeball creature finds a new vessel, which is the dead corpse of Arthur, who was left on the beach after he got the chestburster. So that's where that has ended up and left off. Another thing that I've never really mentioned too much is the whole symbolism around Peter Pan. So Wendy and the other Simps are named after the Lost Boys. And Boy, throughout the show, he keeps reading passages from Peter Pan's book. And you find out that actually he sees himself as Peter Pan, teaching the Lost Boys and Wendy and guiding them through life. But I think the symbolism is that he doesn't want them to grow up. He wants them to stay naive. And this is something that we've actually spoken about before. The synthetics are essentially raised to be naive, to be innocent, to not question anything, and to just follow orders. And that's it. So actually, I kind of understood the Peter Pan symbolism a lot more in this episode, but it was essentially just told to you directly. Instead of having it be quite subtle, you were just told this is what it is. This is what Boy's mentality behind that was. And at the end of the episode, Wendy says, you're not Peter Pan, because Peter Pan is the boy who never grew up, but you started off immediately as a man. There was a point where Boy admits that to get to the top he had to kill people, and he talks about how the creation that he made when he was little killed his parent. It kind of goes through, and I think it's interesting that he's also called Boy to further emphasise like he thinks he's Peter Pan. He thinks he's that boy genius that will never grow up. However, when he talks about what he did when he was a kid, that's a very adult, mature thing. Not a nice thing, but it's a mature thing. So immediately that whole facade of him being, the boy that never grew up, that's already gone. So I think it's interesting that Wendy, of all people, is the one to say that, like, no, you think you're this, but actually you're not. But yeah, I think it was interesting that the symbolism of Peter Pan was overall there to essentially say that he wanted the synthetics to remain naive and childlike and innocent and not question anything. And actually, that's not what's happened at all. Of course they're going to question stuff after a while. So I kind of liked that and thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, it's taken me a while to figure out actually why this kept being brought up. And in response to what Boy tells the synthetics, they display their power, which was really cool. It was really, really cool. They essentially take down the entire facility as, I think Wendy describes it as, okay, well, our original bodies are dead, so let's be ghosts. Like, we can do that. And that's really cool. That's a really interesting idea and really interesting symbolism of them being ghosts and like being able to manipulate technology and stuff, because we've seen that at the beginning of the show with Wendy. She can manipulate TV recordings and live broadcasts. Like, we've seen that already. So she uses that to help them escape the facility. Well, what I thought was escape the facility, they've actually take it over instead. With the last video review as well, I also talked about the friction that was obviously going to happen between Hermit and Wendy. In the last episode, Hermit shot Nibs, and actually I thought she was going to die. She isn't, she's fine, she just got injured. But obviously, yes, there was tension between the two. Wendy really resents Hermit for that, but actually what I liked is Smee comes in, and Smee's kind of still the only synth who's innocent. He's still childlike. He hasn't really done any sneaky things or any bad deeds. You compare that to like Slightly or Wendy or even Curly. Like, he hasn't really done that. So he's always kind of stayed, well, obviously aside from helping Slightly, but Smee got blackmailed by Slightly as well. So he didn't actually want to do that. It wasn't until he got blackmailed that he did do that. So Smee has kind of stayed innocent throughout this whole show, but I think that's what I like. You kind of need one of them to stay like that to get a different perspective. And he eventually talks to Wendy and says, look, you can't keep hating your brother over this. And she says, yeah, but he shot Nibs. He was like, and he goes, yeah, but she was attacking one of his friends as well. Like, you can't hold him against that. Like, you can't resent him for that and hate him for that. So in a way, he's kind of a pacifist as well, but he has a different perspective of things, which I quite liked. Again, what I've already said, we kind of need an innocent one in the picture when everyone else has done, bad things or untrustworthy things throughout the show. We kind of need Smee to be that naive, innocent one, to have a different perspective on the situation, but also to calm things down as well. So I quite liked that conversation happened, that interaction happened between them, because it kind of needed to happen. You can't really end the show with Hermit and Wendy still hating each other. That's not really, especially when it happened so quickly in the end of the last episode. Like, you can't really have that and end on that as well. So the last note I have is just says, Season 2 is happening. So, yes, let's go into this. I'm going to talk a bit more about this episode within this talk now, because I want to talk about how it ends and what this means for Season 2. So Season 2 is happening, it has been confirmed, and I'm very interested to see where this is going to go now, because this episode ends with Sylvia, Morrow, Boy and Kirsch. Kirsch got into a fight with Morrow, and they both got quite injured. and they end up in the holding cell that Wendy and the other simps were in at the beginning of the episode. So we've gone in reverse, which is interesting. The baby xenomorph and the grown xenomorph that's Wendy's is now under Wendy's control, both of them are, and they're now acting as guards. At the same time, Wayland is actually coming to the facility to come collect their creatures. So, what I think season 2 is going to be, I think it's going to be Wayland versus the simps and the xenomorphs. I feel like that's kind of where it has to go. I don't know if Prodigy and Wayland are maybe going to form an alliance against them. Maybe that can happen, but I think more what's going to happen is there is going to be a versus thing of Wayland are going to come to the facility, see that the synthetics and the xenomorphs are taken over, and they're going to try and resolve the situation. The eyeball creature is now in the dead corpse of Arthur, so we're also going to have to deal with that as well. Yeah, I think it's basically going to be the creatures versus Wayland. I think that's essentially where it's going, because I can't see where else it's going to go. Everyone else, aside from those 4 figures in the holding cell, who are part of Prodigy, they have all left the island, so they're all gone now. Yeah, I don't really know where else it can go now, but I'm very interested. Well, aside from what I've already said, but I'm very, very interested now, because I think season 2 is going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really fun. But I'm quite looking forward to season 2. I overall really enjoyed this series. Does it have a couple of problems? Yeah. And you kind of need to know what you're getting into with this series as well. I now don't know if this is a prequel or not. I remember at the beginning I was saying, oh yeah, it's been said that it's going to be a prequel to the original Alien, but I don't really know now. So I'm not sure. But overall, I'm interested to see where season 2 is going to go. I will say I definitely think the xenomorphs need to be more involved in season 2. Because while I've enjoyed the whole morality dilemma and overall dilemmas with the synthetics, this is an alien show. So the xenomorphs, now that there are 2 in the picture, they need to be shown more. I also really like the idea of Wendy controlling them. I know some people have been a bit iffy about that, but I've actually quite enjoyed it because it's something different and new to the franchise. And yeah, I think the xenomorphs need to be more involved in this show now, when season 2 comes around. Because, yeah, this is an alien show. You kind of need the aliens to be in here more. But overall, I've really enjoyed this series. And that does end my reviews on AlienEarth. Until season 2 comes out. I'm definitely going to be doing that one. But I was Megan. This is BRWC. See you soon.